A police officer yanks a disabled Marine veteran's wheelchair like it's a toy, mocking him in front of a growing crowd. Then, out of nowhere, black trucks roar into the parking lot, carrying a team ready to answer a call no one expected. But what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. But first, let's go back to the beginning. The sun was beating down hard, the kind of Texas heat that baked concrete and made tires sweat. The mall's parking lot shimmered, oil stains warping in the glare. A light wind pushed paper cups and plastic bags across the asphalt like tumbleweeds, unnoticed by shoppers slipping in and out of air-conditioned stores. But at the center of it all, tension radiated like a thermal bloom from the badge and the man in the chair. Jacob Rayner didn't flinch as Officer Reynolds leaned in, his shadow cutting across Jacob's weather-worn face. The Marine's jaw tightened. His arms, wiry with age, but still corded with discipline, rested on the wheels of his chair. Calm, but locked. Reynolds wasn't done. "I said move!" he barked again, louder now, looking over his shoulder as if daring the gathering bystanders to disagree. Jacob didn't blink. He didn't have to. His voice, when it came, was low and slow. "You ever do time in the sand, officer?" Reynolds tilted his head, smirk curling. "What, Fallujah? Kandahar? No, I served right here. On the force. I deal with real threats." Jacob's lips barely moved. "Then you missed the real ones." That comment lit a fuse. Reynolds took a step forward, his hand twitching toward his utility belt, not for his gun, but the baton. He didn't pull it, not yet, but the intent was loud. It was theater, domination, control, that smug Texas swagger with the badge behind it. "Threat's whatever I say it is," Reynolds muttered. The rookie, Kayla Dean, shifted on her feet, her eyes ping-ponged between the man in the chair and her partner. She was fresh from the academy, still thought justice was something you carried in your chest, not just clipped to your belt. But she said nothing. Jacob had seen that kind of silence before. In war zones, in tribunals, in military hospitals where young men stared at their stumps and nurses pretended not to cry. Silence that came from fear, or, worse, loyalty to the wrong person. Reynolds circled Jacob's wheelchair like a shark, then leaned in again, face too close. "What's wrong, old man? Thought you could flash a placard and everyone would just salute and kiss your ass? Those days are over. Nobody cares about your war stories." Jacob didn't move, but something in his eyes shifted. A tiny, glinting click behind the iris, like a bolt sliding into place. He reached slowly into his shirt pocket and pulled out a phone. The crowd behind the yellow-lined parking spaces murmured. A young woman was holding her phone high now, streaming it live. A man in a cowboy hat whispered to his son, "Just watch, boy, watch." Jacob tapped a contact, no name, just a number labeled Zulu 4. He didn't speak, just waited. One ring, two, then a faint click. That was it. He ended the call. Reynolds snorted. "What was that? Calling your bingo buddies?" Jacob raised his chin slightly. "You'll want to clear this lot." The word sounded calm, but the way he said it, flat, matter-of-fact, cut through the simmering heat. It wasn't a threat. It was a weather report. Reynolds scoffed. "You're out of your damn—" Then the first rumble came. Not thunder, not tires, rotors, deep and thick, slicing through the wind. A Chinook? No. Too low, too fast. Not military, but familiar. A black SUV turned to the corner of the lot, engine snarling low like a wolf on the scent. Then another. Then two motorcycles. Custom, matte black, no plates. The crowd started backing up. Someone said, "Who are these people?" Jacob didn't turn. He didn't need to look. They weren't here for revenge. They were here for him. The air changed the moment those trucks rolled in. The low growl of their engines felt like thunder rolling across bone-dry desert. They weren't speeding, but they moved with that unmistakable military precision, measured, confident, unshakable. No sirens, no loud music, just steel and silence. The kind of silence that said, "We've done this before." Jacob Rayner sat under the cruel sun, his skin damp with sweat, and something deeper, something colder than heat. The pain in his back was familiar, like an old knife turned sideways in the spine. But pain was never just pain. Not anymore. It was the memory of a tent in Helmand Province, the sting of morphine, the wet heat of blood soaking through desert camo. It was the muffled voice of Doc Wilkes shouting over the roar of chopper blades. "Stay with me, Jacob. Stay with me." He remembered the smell of dust and diesel. He remembered the sound of metal being sawed from his own body. He remembered the silence that came after, so deep it felt like drowning in space. But most of all, he remembered waking up to an empty hospital room, the buzz of fluorescent lights, and a folded flag waiting on the nightstand for a man who would never stand again. That morning, he'd made himself a promise. You fall once. You don't stay down. That promise was what kept him going when the world pretended not to see him, when strangers looked away from the chair, or when the VA lost another file. It kept him going through the painkillers, through the paperwork, through the pity. But today, in the middle of a sun-bleached parking lot with a badge in his face and a hand shoving him like garbage, that promise wavered. Until now. The trucks stopped, doors opened, and out they came. Not in uniform, but unmistakable. They walked like they still heard cadence in their bones. Luis Moreno, compact, thick-necked, fireman's arms crossed over his chest. The man once dragged Jacob out of a burning Humvee while taking shrapnel to the ribs. He nodded once at Jacob, then turned to scan the perimeter like it was a combat zone. Sarah Duncan, her hair in a tight braid, eyes sharp behind schoolteacher glasses. She had diffused IEDs with the calm precision of a surgeon. Now she taught history to kids who didn't know her spine held titanium. She said nothing, but her jaw was locked in quiet rage. Miles Booker, sleek in a custom Navy suit, phone in one hand, briefcase in the other. He used to be the unit's prankster. Now he made defense contractors sweat in congressional hearings. His Marine pin glinted against his lapel like a scalpel. And Cole Hastings, tall, broad, with the gait of someone who still trained every morning at 0500. His right leg was prosthetic, but he moved like it wasn't. His German shepherd, Valor, stuck close at his heel, eyes scanning every movement. Cole stepped forward, eyes locked on Jacob, and offered a sharp nod. "Sir," he said, voice like gravel under pressure, "reporting for duty." Reynolds laughed, a brittle, defensive bark. "This isn't the damn military." "No," Sarah said quietly, stepping to Jacob's side. "But it's still America, and that means something." The crowd had grown, phones lifted high. The recording wasn't just digital, it was human. Eyes, ears, witnesses, accountability. Reynolds's face twitched. He reached for his radio, static bursting as he called for backup. But before he could speak again, Kayla Dean stepped forward. Her voice trembled, but her eyes were steady. "I'm reporting you." Reynolds turned, shocked. "What?" "For harassment, for assault, for violating his rights and shaming your badge." She clicked her body cam forward with a mechanical beep, the red light blinking like a countdown. "And I'll testify to every second of it." Gasps rippled through the onlookers. Reynolds looked around, realizing for the first time that the power was gone. It had drained out of his uniform like air from a slashed tire. No one was with him now, not even the rookie. Jacob didn't smile. He didn't have to. The pain was still there, deep in the joints, in the memory, but it was now laced with something else. Not relief, not yet, but hope. The video had no music, no voiceover, just raw footage, grainy cell phone clips stitched together by truth. It opened with a close-up of Jacob's face, eyes calm, body motionless as Reynolds manhandled his chair. Then the whistle, that arrogant, grating sound, and then, like clockwork, the arrival of the black trucks, the formation of the fire team. Sarah's quiet rebuke, Kayla's defiant stand, the internet ignited. Within 6 hours, never leave him. A man trended across every major platform. News anchors with furrowed brows replayed the footage, panelists debated police overreach, and veterans groups flooded forums with solidarity and fury. Civilians from all walks of life began sharing their own stories of fathers forgotten, mothers ignored, brothers in arms failed by a system that thanked them once and forgot them forever. But amidst all the noise, Jacob stayed quiet. He declined every interview, every photo op. When the mayor offered to name a street after him, Jacob only asked, "Can you fix the VA office plumbing first?" He didn't want vengeance. He didn't want attention. He wanted change. And that's what brought him to the school. No fanfare, no press, just a middle school auditorium with a squeaky mic, rows of fidgeting kids, and a clock that ticked like sniper fire. Jacob stood slowly, each motion deliberate, each breath a reminder that he had earned every inch of ground he took back. He wore a plain tan shirt tucked into military slacks, his polished prosthetics gleaming beneath the hem. Cole stood beside him, steady as a stone, his grip firm on Jacob's elbow. In the front row, a boy with glasses balanced a notepad on his knees. A girl beside him whispered, "Is he real?" Jacob leaned toward the mic. No dramatics, no script. "Most of you weren't born yet when I wore the uniform," he began, "but that doesn't mean you don't understand what it means to stand up for someone who's down. That's older than the flag. That's older than war." He paused, scanning the room. "I served because I believed in something. Not a flag on a pole, not a line in a speech. I believed in the guy next to me, the one who'd take a bullet for me, the one I'd carry through hell if it meant getting him home." A few of the kids stopped fidgeting. "I didn't call my team because I was angry. I called them because when things go sideways, you call the people who still believe in doing what's right, even when it's not easy, especially when it's not easy." He tapped the podium with a knuckle. "That's loyalty. That's love. That's what makes a Marine." Then the voice from the back, a boy's hand raised high, voice unsure. "Mr. Jacob, are you still a Marine?" The question stilled the room. Jacob's mouth curved into something soft, but unshakable. "No, son," he said, straightening his spine. "I am a Marine, always will be." And in that moment, the doors at the side of the auditorium creaked open. Luis entered first, head held high. Sarah followed, then Miles, then Kayla, now in plain clothes, but with that same steady resolve in her eyes. Cole stood taller beside Jacob, valor quietly settling at his feet. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. They flanked him silently, left, right, behind, shoulder to shoulder, and the children saw what no headline could show. Not just medals, not just sacrifice, but the invisible tether of honor. The unbroken line from one generation to the next. No one had to say the words. They were etched in posture, in presence, in silence. We don't leave our own behind. As the applause rose, Jacob didn't bow, didn't wave. He just looked out at those young faces and hoped the message planted itself deeper than the noise. The uniform may come off, the body may break, but duty, that never leaves.